Every woman's life when the world grows quiet and she is left alone with the sound of her own heartbeat. Some call it loneliness, others call it a wound, but I call it a beginning. Because a woman without her life partner is not a story of emptiness. It is a story of awakening. It is the moment she discovers the rhythm of her own soul, the strength in her own spine, and the beauty in walking forward with her head unbowed. She does not wait to be completed. She rises to remember she has always been whole, and in that rise, she becomes a testament to resilience, to self-love, and to the unbreakable spirit woven into every woman who dares to stand alone and still stand tall. A woman stands whole, even when she stands alone. The world may try to convince her otherwise. It may whisper that her worth is measured by the presence of another beside her, that her life is somehow unfinished without a hand to hold or a voice to echo hers. But a woman who has walked through silence knows better. She knows that her completeness does not come from another heart, but from the steady courage beating inside her own chest. She knows that standing alone is not a punishment. It is a powerful declaration that she belongs to herself first. And when she realizes this truth, she rises with a quiet confidence that nothing and no one can take away. She stands whole because she understands that wholeness is not about being surrounded. It is about being centered. Life may have taken things from her: love, time, companionship, dreams she once traced with hopeful fingers. But it has never taken her ability to rebuild. Every woman carries within her an ancient strength, inherited from generations who stood tall in the face of storms. That strength does not disappear simply because her life partner is absent. In fact, it often reveals itself in those very moments when she must carry her own heart, heal her own wounds, and speak her own truth. Solitude becomes the classroom where she relearns her worth and reclaims her voice. Standing alone teaches her a language she never knew she needed, the language of self-trust. She begins to trust that her footsteps, even when uncertain, are still leading her somewhere meaningful. She learns to trust that her dreams, even the ones delayed or bruised, still belong to her. She learns to trust that she can walk through a dark season and still find a dawn waiting for her. And with each step forward, she discovers the quiet glory of being her own companion. She starts to enjoy her own laughter, understand her own tears, and treasure the peace she creates with her own hands. People often misunderstand a woman who stands alone. They see her independence and mistake it for coldness. They see her silence and assume she is broken. But what they do not see is the fire she hides beneath her calm, the courage she wears beneath her softness. She is not searching for someone to complete her. She is searching for someone who can meet her, someone who respects her wholeness rather than tries to fill a space that was never empty. She is not waiting to be chosen. She is choosing herself every single day. And that is a love story greater than any written in romance. A woman who stands alone is not fragile. She is focused, not abandoned. She is becoming, not incomplete. She is unfolding into the woman she was meant to be all along. She stands whole because she finally understands that her value was never determined by who walked beside her, but by the unwavering strength that lives within her. And when she rises with the certainty that she has everything she needs, not because she has someone, but because she has herself. Her strength is not borrowed from another soul. It rises from within. A woman without her life partner often discovers this truth in the quiet hours, in the moments when the world expects her to falter. But instead of collapsing, she feels something awaken inside her, something ancient and powerful. She realizes that her strength was never meant to be handed to her by another person. It was always waiting, tucked beneath her ribs, steady and patient, ready to rise the moment she needed it most. She begins to understand that strength is not given, it is grown. It is nurtured by every hardship she survives, every disappointment she carries, and every tear she wipes from her own face. With time, she learns to stand not because someone taught her how, but because her spirit refuses to let her stay down. She starts to recognize the quiet power that lives in her ability to continue. When her life partner is no longer by her side, the world may expect her to shrink, but instead, she expands. She expands into her responsibilities, into her dreams, into the spaces of her life she once ignored. She finds that she can handle challenges she once thought were impossible. She learns to make decisions with clarity she didn't know she possessed. She becomes the voice of reason in her own life, the provider of her own comfort, the defender of her own peace. And every time she solves a problem alone, she feels her own strength rise like morning light, gently but unshakably. Her strength rises because she stops waiting for someone to save her. She saves herself. She gathers the pieces of her heart and holds them with tenderness. She learns to repair the cracks with hope and patience. She builds new dreams, even when the old ones have fallen apart. She shows herself the kind of love she once looked for in another, a love that doesn't leave when things become difficult. And when she learns she can be her own source of love, she becomes unstoppable. She begins walking through the world with a deeper sense of confidence, knowing she is supported by the one person who will never abandon her, herself. People often underestimate a woman who must depend only on her own courage. They think solitude weakens her, but it does the opposite. Solitude sharpens her intuition, strengthens her resolve, and deepens her understanding of her own worth. She begins to choose her relationships with intention, not desperation. She begins to speak with authority because her voice has learned to echo through empty spaces. She begins to carry herself with a grace that comes from overcoming, and she realizes that needing no one does not mean loving no one. It means loving from a place of fullness, not fear. Her strength rises from within because it has been tested by life, refined by loss, and fueled by resilience. She is a woman who stands, not because someone holds her up, but because she has discovered she can hold herself. And in that truth, she finds a freedom greater than anything she has ever known. Loneliness is not her identity. It is a chapter she walks through with grace. Too many times the world tries to label a woman who walks alone as lacking something, as if solitude is a sign of deficiency rather than a season of growth. But a woman who has journeyed through quiet nights and silent mornings knows that loneliness is not a definition. It is an experience. It shapes her, yes, but it does not confine her. She understands that the absence of a life partner is not the absence of life. It is a doorway, sometimes painful, sometimes unexpected, but always leading somewhere she needs to go. And when she steps through that doorway, she walks with dignity, even when her heart feels heavy. She learns that loneliness is not an enemy. It is a teacher. It teaches her how to sit with herself without fear. It teaches her to listen to the echoes of her own voice, to hear the stories she has ignored, the dreams she has silenced, the emotions she has buried. In that space where no one else's footsteps accompany her own, she discovers her inner landscape. She notices the resilience hidden in her sighs, the courage pulsing underneath her doubts, the wisdom waiting at the edges of her sorrow. Loneliness becomes the mirror where she finally sees herself clearly, not as someone who has been left behind, but as someone who is being led inward. She begins to understand that grace is not about walking through life untouched by pain. Grace is about walking through pain without losing the softness of your spirit. She moves through her lonely chapters with a heart that refuses to grow cold. She still loves, still hopes, still believes in the possibilities ahead. She does not allow loneliness to harden her. She lets it deepen her. She lets it refine her voice, strengthen her spine, and widen her compassion. She becomes gentle with herself, patient with her healing, and kind to the parts of her that still tremble. And in that gentleness, she finds her own power. There are moments when loneliness tries to convince her that she is forgotten, but she knows better. She knows that every season has its purpose. She knows that the silence she walks through now is preparing her for the symphonies yet to come. She knows that the emptiness she feels today is making room for new blessings tomorrow. And she knows that she has survived too much, loved too deeply, and grown too beautifully to be defined by a temporary chapter. She discovers that grace is not something she earns, it is something she carries. She carries it in the way she continues to show up for herself. She carries it in the way she holds her own hand when no one else is around. She carries it in the way she keeps going, even when her path feels uncertain. Loneliness may visit her, but it does not become her. It may walk beside her, but it does not lead her. She is the author of her own story. And this chapter, this quiet, tender, challenging chapter, is simply where she learns to rise without leaning on another. And when she emerges from it, she does so with a spirit wiser, stronger, and more luminous than before. She discovers that her first and forever companion is herself. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that no matter who walks in or out of her world, the one presence that remains constant is her own. She begins to understand that the relationship she builds with herself is the foundation upon which every other connection will stand. And when the silence settles around her, when she finds herself navigating life without a partner to lean on, she learns to lean inward. She learns to sit with her own thoughts, to listen to the quiet whispers of her own soul, and to embrace the woman she is becoming. In this sacred companionship with herself, she discovers comfort she once sought from others, but never truly found. She starts treating herself with the same tenderness she once reserved for someone else. She begins to honor her feelings instead of hiding them, nurture her dreams instead of postponing them, and protect her peace instead of allowing it to be disrupted. She learns to enjoy her own company, discovering that solitude can be soft, peaceful, even beautiful. She finds joy in the small moments she creates for herself: a warm cup of tea, a long walk, a quiet sunrise, the sound of her own laughter. She realizes she does not have to wait for someone to bring her happiness. She can craft it with her own hands. And in doing so, she becomes both the creator and the receiver of her own joy. As this companionship deepens, she begins to trust herself in ways she never did before. She trusts her intuition, knowing it has guided her through storms and carried her through heartbreak. She trusts her resilience, for she has survived days she once feared she could not bear. She trusts her strength, because even when she felt fragile, she kept moving forward. She becomes her own anchor in uncertain times, her own safe place when life feels overwhelming. And with that trust comes freedom, a freedom that makes her stand taller, speak clearer, and choose more wisely than ever before. She discovers that the love she gives herself does not replace the love of others. It strengthens her to receive it. When a woman becomes her own companion, she no longer accepts relationships that diminish her or demand she shrink. She no longer clings to people out of fear of being alone. She no longer loses herself trying to keep someone else. Instead, she knows her worth so deeply that she refuses to settle for anything less than respect, kindness, and truth. She understands that love is not about filling a void. It is about overflowing from a place already whole. In recognizing herself as her first and forever companion, she becomes unshakable. She learns that she is never truly alone because she carries a powerful presence within her, her own. A presence that walks with her through every sunrise and every sorrow, that encourages her through every challenge, that celebrates every triumph. She becomes a woman rooted in her own spirit, guided by her own wisdom, and nourished by her own love. And when she moves through the world with that understanding, she becomes a force of grace and strength that no absence, no loss, and no loneliness can ever diminish. The absence of a partner cannot dim the radiance of a woman who knows her worth, A woman who has learned the truth of her own value carries a light that does not depend on anyone else's presence to shine. She understands that her brilliance is not borrowed, it is born from the fire inside her. Even when she walks through seasons of solitude, her spirit continues to glow with quiet confidence. She refuses to let the world convince her that her life is missing something simply because a partner is not standing beside her. She knows that her identity is not shaped by another's affection, but by the depth of her own character, courage, and compassion. And that knowledge allows her to rise, even in the absence of companionship. She moves through the world with a certainty that startles those who expect her to crumble. People often assume that without a partner, she must feel small or forgotten. But she has learned a secret. She is not defined by who stays or who leaves. She is defined by the steady force of her own heart. She knows her worth because she has walked through heartbreak and rebuilt herself piece by piece. She knows her worth because she has seen her strength in the moments when no one else was there to witness it. She knows her worth because she has faced doubts, fears, and disappointments, and still kept going. This inner knowing becomes her shield, her guide, and her radiance. When she knows her worth, she no longer allows the absence of someone to dictate the presence of joy in her life. She cultivates happiness from within, watering the parts of her soul that once felt neglected. She invests in her dreams, her passions, her growth. She surrounds herself with people who uplift her, not because she needs their validation, but because she now recognizes what kind of energy she deserves. She stops apologizing for her strength and stops shrinking for the comfort of others. She stands tall, knowing that her worthiness is inherent, not granted by another human being. She begins to glow differently, not the glow that seeks attention, but the glow that comes from peace. A peace earned through understanding that being without a life partner is not a failure, but a phase that holds its own beauty and purpose. She embraces this phase with open arms, knowing it offers space for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. She takes time to reconnect with parts of herself she once overlooked. She learns to love the woman she sees in the mirror, not for her perfection, but for her persistence, her tenderness, her depth. And as she grows rooted in her worth, something powerful happens. She becomes whole in a way that no relationship could ever guarantee. Her radiance becomes undeniable, unmistakable, and unshakable. A radiance that blooms from the inside out. A radiance that does not fade because someone is missing, but strengthens because she is present in her own life. She walks forward, illuminated by the truth that her light is hers, wholly, beautifully, and eternally. She learns to build her own table, not wait for someone to invite her. Somewhere along her journey, she realizes that waiting for a place in someone else's world keeps her from creating the world she deserves. She understands that life does not pause for an invitation, and neither should she. A woman without her life partner often discovers this truth the hard way, through days when she felt overlooked, unchosen, or left behind. But those very moments teach her something powerful. She does not need to sit at a table where her presence feels like an afterthought. She can craft her own space, carve her own path, and create a life that reflects her strength, her voice, and her worth. And once she decides to build her own table, she discovers that she has always held the tools within her. She gathers her courage like wood, her experiences like nails, and her resilience like the steady hammer shaping her becoming. With every decision she makes, she adds another piece to her foundation. She invests in her education, her skills, her passions. She nurtures friendships that feel like home and lets go of relationships that drain her spirit. She learns to trust her instincts, allowing them to guide her as she constructs a life that feels authentic. And in the process of building, she finds pride in her independence. She gains a deeper understanding of her capabilities, recognizing that she is far stronger, wiser, and more resourceful than she ever knew. She stops waiting for validation from people who could never see her full worth. She realizes that Pulling up a chair to someone else's table often required her to make herself smaller, quieter, or more convenient. But when she builds her own table, she no longer has to shrink. She can laugh loudly, speak boldly, dream fearlessly. She can design a space where she is free to be her complete self, not a fragment, not a compromise. And in creating that space, she becomes a woman who does not chase approval. She becomes a woman who creates opportunity. Her table becomes a place of strength, a place of healing, a place where she honors her journey. It is built not from bitterness, but from clarity. She invites people into her world, not out of need, but out of choice. Those who sit with her are those who respect her, who uplift her, who see her not as someone waiting to be completed, but as someone already whole. And if no one comes, she still sits at her table with confidence, knowing that solitude in her own space is far more meaningful than company in a place where she feels unseen. Eventually, her table grows not only in size, but in purpose. It becomes a symbol of her resilience, a reminder that she does not have to beg for belonging. She belongs because she chose herself. She belongs because she built something with her own hands, shaped by her own heart. And when she sits at the table she created, she realizes she never needed an invitation. She needed vision, courage, and the belief that she is worthy of a life she designs herself. And that realization becomes her liberation, a liberation that makes her unstoppable. Her dreams remain valid, vibrant, and unshaken by solitude. Even in the quiet spaces of her life, she discovers that the visions she carries in her heart do not disappear just because someone else is not there to echo them. A woman without her life partner learns that her dreams were never dependent on another person's presence. They were planted in her long before she ever shared her life with anyone. They live in her because they were meant for her. And even when life shifts, even when plans change, even when the path becomes unfamiliar, her dreams remain alive, waiting for her to pick them up again with renewed courage. She begins to understand that solitude can be a protector of dreams. Without the noise of expectations and the weight of someone else's disappointments, she gains clarity. She sees what she truly wants, not what she was taught to want. She listens to her own desires without filtering them through the needs of someone else. She discovers ambitions that had been buried under responsibility, hidden beneath routine, or dimmed by compromise. In the quiet, her dreams begin to speak again, softly at first, then with the steady confidence of something that knows it deserves to exist. She no longer asks whether she is capable. She starts asking what she is capable of. She gives herself permission to reach, to try, to fail, and to rise again. She pursues what lights her up: education, career, art, healing, travel, growth, without waiting for approval. She nurtures her dreams the way she once nurtured relationships, understanding now that the future she builds for herself must be watered with belief and consistency. And as she invests in her aspirations, they begin to bloom in ways she once feared were impossible. People may look at her life and assume that without a partner, she must feel limited. But they do not see the fire in her eyes when she talks about the future she is shaping. They do not see the certainty in her steps as she moves toward her goals. They do not see the nights she spends studying, working, creating, becoming. They do not see the sacrifices she willingly makes because she knows her dreams are worth it. A woman walking alone can be one of the most powerful forces on earth because she is driven not by competition, not by dependency, but by purpose. She realizes that dreams do not diminish in the absence of companionship. They often grow stronger. She learns that pursuing a dream alone does not mean she will end alone. It means she is preparing herself for a future where she is fulfilled, steady, and whole. And if someone joins her along the way, they will meet a woman who knows where she is going, a woman who is already rising, a woman who does not need saving but invites partnership from a place of strength, Her dreams remain valid because she remains committed to them. They remain vibrant because she breathes life into them each day. They remain unshaken because she refuses to let her circumstances define her destiny. She understands now that a dream is not kept alive by who stands beside her, but by the courage within her. And with that courage, she walks forward, knowing that the life she imagines is not only possible, but already unfolding beneath her determined steps. A woman without her life partner is not incomplete. She is in conversation with her soul. When the world grows quieter around her, when she no longer has someone beside her to fill the spaces with their voice, she begins to hear the soft, honest language of her own spirit. At first, the silence may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, as if she is stepping into a room she has never entered before. But slowly, she realizes that the quiet is not empty. It is rich with wisdom she had forgotten to listen to. It holds truths she once brushed aside, desires she tucked away, and feelings she was too busy or too afraid to face. In this solitude, she begins a dialogue with herself, one deeper, more genuine, and more revealing than any conversation she has ever had with another. She learns to ask herself the questions she avoided when life was crowded. What do I want? What do I need? What have I ignored within me? And she answers not with fear, but with honesty. She tells herself the truth about her hopes, her hurts, her dreams, and her disappointments. She acknowledges what she longs for and what she must let go of. She no longer hides her vulnerabilities or masks her emotions. Instead, she meets herself with compassion. She listens to her own pain with the tenderness she once reserved for someone else. And she celebrates her own strength with the pride she rarely allowed herself to feel. As this conversation deepens, she begins to understand herself in a way she never did before. She sees the patterns that shaped her, the wounds she carried unknowingly, the expectations she absorbed from others, and the fears that kept her small. She becomes aware of how much she gave, how much she sacrificed, and how much of herself she silenced in the name of love or loyalty. And with this awareness comes transformation. She starts rewriting the stories she once believed about herself, stories of inadequacy, unworthiness, or dependency. She replaces them with truths grounded in dignity and courage. She reminds herself that she is deserving of tenderness, respect, and peace. She discovers that being in conversation with her soul does not mean she must be alone forever. It means she must understand herself before inviting another into her life again. It means she recognizes her own needs clearly, so she never again settles for less than what honors her. It means she values her energy deeply, so she is careful about who she gives it to. And it means she embraces her wholeness fiercely, so she never tries to fit into someone else's idea of who she should be. Through this inner dialogue, she grows wiser, she grows calmer, she grows more intentional. She finds joy in her own company because she no longer feels like a stranger to herself. She learns that her soul is not silent. It has always been speaking. She simply needed the space to listen. And the more she listens, the more she rises. She rises into a woman who does not fear solitude because she knows solitude is where she meets her truest self. She rises into a woman who carries her own presence with pride, knowing that she is guided by a wisdom deeper than any loneliness. She rises into a woman who understands that the most important relationship she will ever have is the one she builds with her own soul, a relationship that cannot be abandoned, betrayed, or taken away. In that realization, she becomes unbreakable, she becomes luminous, she becomes whole.